Daniel, brother. How are you?
I am good, dude. I am really good.
Yeah.
It
How's
was
your day going?
fantastic. Just went to church this morning with the family, and our church is celebrating their 30th anniversary of the foundation of the church. And today, the pastor who planted the seed for this church 30 years ago came and spoke, and it was really, really, really good. And one of those sermons that, man, I struggle with sleep sometimes. Like I'm just old age, maybe. I don't know, sore bones, like sleeping. And I was just really sound asleep, and like my phone died through the middle of the night, so my alarms didn't go off this morning. I woke up and I was like, it's like 7, no, just a little after 7, which is really late for me to sleep in. And it's like, man, I could easily just stay in bed and not go to church today and watch it from home. But I was one of those ones where I was like, got up, got myself going, and really, really grateful that I was there. Like someone spoke some prophetic word over me, and then the sermon was just one that I think, well, all of us need to hear, like the power of forgiveness and how we have been forgiven, but the part of the point of forgiveness is to let go of. Well, we can never forget, but if we keep hanging on to that bitter root, that we're only poisoning ourselves, that like we can truly never grow past it without forgiving whatever. And then also that in that same breath, learning how to forgive ourselves, which has always been a bit of a struggle for me, and the forgiving of myself. You're muted, dude.
Wow, nothing but technical difficulties for me today, but
That's all right, man. I'm in no hurry today, so.
I I'm reading a book right now called The Sunflower, and it's about forgiveness. It takes place in World War II, and it's about a Nazi officer who's he's in like urgent care basically, and the only doctor around is like a Jew. They have to pull out of one of the internment camps. And
Right.
so he's like sitting there as this doctor's like looking over him, and he's basically just like confessing all of his sins, everything that he's done over the last like little bit of his career. And he's basically just like begging him for forgiveness, this doctor that's working on him.
Hmm.
And it's just I'm only like just started it, and it's just like
It
a
sounds.
horrific story, man, of him
Is it
just
a true
confessing.
story, or is it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would. I love. Like if I read I don't know what you like a nonfiction fiction book, if you will, like that's a nonfiction story but written in a fictional format.
Yeah.
I love that. Like I don't know if you've ever read the book Ghost Soldiers, but it's fantastic.
No, I
It's
haven't read it before.
yeah, if you can get a copy, it's about the rescue of the last of the Baton Death March uh POWs and like what went into it. So it like the first part of the book starts out just telling the POW story from their capture and their time um in the POW camp, and then it starts telling the story of the 101st Airborne who went in to rescue these guys and what took place to like make that whole operation happen, and then the operation, and then it starts bouncing back and forth between uh prisoner and rescuer story. It's pretty good.
Wow. Yeah, it's
I mean,
dude, these types of things, like I think about even just forgiving myself for some of the small things that I've done. I'm like, I can't even get past that, dude. And then you hear
right,
stories
and to
like
think that we've
this.
been, yeah, but then to think that we've just been forgiven, and then that since that grace and forgiveness has been so freely forgiven, that I was funny. Just before we got on here, I was doing a daily devotional, and this one is about Johnny Cash. And I don't know, you probably don't know this about me, but I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan. Like well, my son's name is Cash, named after Johnny Cash, and um, I'm just reading this devotional, and today one of the scripture readings was from Matthew, when I think I think it's Peter asked Jesus, "How many times do I need to forgive my brother who sinned against me? 7 times?" And Jesus says, "No, 7 times 77." And like it's like right, because we've been I mean, daily forgiven, and that same forgiveness needs to be shared with others.
Yeah, yeah. It always does seem like, for me at least, like the hardest thing to do is to forgive myself, kind of. Like I
Oh,
always just,
agreed. I can let a lot slide off my back and just be like, oh, I understand where people where they're at, but like, I part of me still probably struggles with a bit of prideful perfectionism to
yeah,
an
yeah.
extent, and then that prideful perfectionism like uh shows manifests itself in like not being able to forgive myself because you're not living up to your standard or silly things like that.
Oh, dude, I even like I just think back like, man, at this place in my life, like I should be like at this stage instead, or like I should be at like, like I always think back and I'm like, well, I probably would be if I wasn't such an idiot like 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Oh, dude, or for 25. Yeah, dude, you don't think I struggle with that same thought probably on a daily or every other day basis. It's hard. It's something I've actually been talking to my therapist about is that, like, sort of like a marathon runner, not every marathon runner starts at the actual starting line. Like if there's how many thousands of people that run the New York Marathon, some people are probably running from a mile further away. Like, they're doing more than a marathon because they're so much further away by the time they actually get out. Like, and sometimes that's how my life feels because I made so many detrimental choices that for either no fault of my own or completely all my own fault. So I mean, there's certain amount of the stuff that I was brought up in that led to my circuit, me choosing the things that I did in my past. And then obviously in adulthood, once I realized that I was making bad decisions and just continually made them, like, yeah,
Yeah, it's fucking brutal, man. That's
it
like one of
is.
the
Life is fucking hard.
it's like one of the biggest things that I think that I struggle with, I'd say, is like that feeling of like guilt or shame or just like regret of like, man, why did I waste so much time? Like how did it take so long for me to see the message that was clearly being sent?
Yeah, I struggle with that exact same thought a lot. And part of it is like some of the things I've been unpacking in therapy is that like I just never thought that the life I am pursuing now was ever something that was capable or meant for me. It was meant for somebody who looked a certain way or who had a certain, upbringing or and that wasn't for me. And so I just settled into this like life was always going to be whatever it was and it was never going to be anything different because that's all I knew and I just accepted that as my fate at probably like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember just kind of feeling lost. Like I was just kind of I felt like there was just like no place for me.
Yeah, exact same here. Or that and I also don't think like I just like growing up it was like you you're a blue collar worker and you do these jobs that you come home and everyone bitches about and like I'm fucking fucked, God, this day just sucks. It's like a 16-hour day and I'm fucking pissed off and I'm gonna smoke some pot and drink some beers, smoke a whole bunch of cigarettes and just be a dick because I hate what I do. And I'm like resentful because like I took it as always like, oh, you're you're resentful because you have to provide for us and do something you hate. And so I'm like, well, that sucks. Like, this is what I get to look forward to is like
Yeah.
this life of like, doing a job you hate for 30, like that just never entertained that. And then that idea never interested me. And then like, uh, because of the limited views your parents have, and because you have not experienced anything as a teenager, like especially like growing up somewhere super small and rural like I did, like uh I had no idea what the world had to offer. There's so much out there to pursue and know and enjoy. Like there's an endless amount of things you can do to make money that you can pursue, especially in this day and age, man. There is just an infinite amount of possibilities.
Yeah. E- Even just like the idea, like you said, like working in like kind of like a blue collar job where you like working your ass off all day. It's easy to kind of like start to almost get like resentful, like you said. Dude, because my whole family, like most of the guys are carpenters. They all do like home renovations, restoration work. And for a while, it kind of felt like I was like, oh, I don't want to be forced into doing this. Like, I just, like, I'd rather do anything else. And like, I quit and I
Mm-hmm.
tried to work in like pretty much every other industry. I worked in sales, I worked, in restaurants. I tried to do like some online stuff, like some home stuff. And it wasn't until like I actually chose to go back to construction for certain reasons. Like I just kind of was like, I don't really want to be staring at screens all day. I want to be outside. I want to be moving. I want to be building things. Like this is how, I realized I'd rather work with things than I'd
With
rather deal
people.
with, yeah, yeah, a lot of the time, man. Truly, that is kind of it. Like, because
100%.
people like they kind of hurt me more, dude. Like they piss me off, they frustrate me. Whereas things like it's way easier to not take it personal, you know?
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Unless you're trying to build something and it just doesn't go back together right, and that can be frustrating as heck. Or
Yeah, yeah. It's just trying to avoid that as much as possible, man.
yeah, right. Yep.
But I remember even like being as like a late teenager, like when you're in high school and you have like that guidance counselor or whatever. And I
Yeah.
remember like talking to that person and they were like, so what kinds of things do you want to do? Like, have you thought about college? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I'm like, no, dude, all I think about is like partying and playing
Yeah.
sports. Like,
100%.
that's it.
Yep. Playing sports and partying, hedonistic to my core.
Yeah. And it's like, I remember like asking him, I'm like, what job should I do? Like, what should I do? Like, and he's like, well, I can't tell you that. And I'm like, who's
Why?
gonna tell me then?
Yeah, right. I felt the same way, the exact same way. And it's also like the more I learn about the reasons I chose the path that I did in the first part of my life, um, the more I realized that like pleasure was like the one thing that never truly got me in trouble. I mean, obviously it did because there's times I would lie about where, I think every dumbass boy at some point or kid at some point goes like, I'm staying the night at person A's house, person A is staying the night at person's B house. And like that never like, I don't know. This is literally the dumbest lie you could like. So there were obviously opportunities like that where I was seeking pleasure and I got in trouble for lying. But like, my life didn't really get me in trouble until it started costing me everything. Um, right. But like trying to find pleasure never really got me in trouble. So we're learning to feel anything. Other emotions often got me in trouble, right? Like releasing my anger got me in trouble a lot. Got me in trouble with the law. Got me in trouble at home. Got me in trouble at school. And so somewhere along the line, I was like, well, if I just chase pleasure, like I'm just gonna feel good, right? And then you don't feel good, and then it leads to, there's something in. Hold on 1 second. I think I can do this. Um, Sorry,
No,
I
you're
want
all
to quote
good.
this right. I want to quote this right. Um, in Hebrews. So I should just remember this, but for some reason, like my memory doesn't work real good, and I should. It's one of my favorite scriptures, right? And it says, it's Hebrews 12:11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Right? Like, man, had I have known that a discipline that everyone was trying to enforce in me, like doing that thing every day, showing up and being consistent, like what discipline is so often, especially as in the Western world, like we think of something as discipline as like you're in trouble, right? Like discipline isn't
It seems
being
like
shaped or
punishment.
formed. It's used exactly. It's used as punishment, so it becomes the word discipline instantly becomes bad because it's a synonym for punishment in our culture. Where really like being disciplined means That's how you grow as a human being. That's how you like plant roots. It's how you produce. It's how you produce righteous and fruitful fruit, and not a bitter vine. That's I don't know. That verse has always just struck out to me. Is like, I mean, it took me 40 years to realize that like we need discipline so we can be trained by it, so we can become righteous in and of itself. Right? I think that we have lost that concept of that discipline isn't necessarily something bad. Like there's great things come from doing hard work,
Yeah, yeah. And there's
and
almost
not
like
just
a, sorry,
sorry,
go
and
ahead.
not just hard. Not I don't mean to cut you off. Not just hard work of like back-breaking labor, but like the hard work of growing spiritually, the hard work of physical health, and the hard work of healing ourselves mentally. You know, like that stuff all requires a certain amount of discipline, and that's important.
Yeah, yeah. And I think somewhere along the way, like I know I can speak for like just myself in this, but like I felt like a lot of the time as like a kid growing up, especially as a teenager, like discipline, there was almost like a pride in being undisciplined. Like it was kind of like cooler to be undisciplined. Like I was like kind of like adopted this attitude of like, fuck it, I'm never gonna try. Because like if I'm just gonna try and then I'm gonna fail, like I'd rather not try and fail. You know what I mean? And so like it kind of seemed cooler to be undisciplined.
It does. 100%. I couldn't agree that. Yeah, I was that kid, right? Like, I wore that shit as a badge of honor. Like, dude, I'll just do whatever and whenever, and like, no one's gonna tell me what to do. I mean, people would be like that when I'd walk in a room. People would be like, "Oh, it's James Yount. No one's gonna tell him what to do." Like, they would make fun. Like that was like, because I would just get drunk and be like, "Don't tell me what to do." You know what I mean? Like, uh, again, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Even just like starting therapy, like there's always been like resistance within me. And I'm sure like a lot of men feel that. Like it's kind of like I mean, it's not even like really like the stereotypical, like, oh, this is for like weak people. It's always just been like this kind of like, it's not for me. Like, oh, that might
Yeah,
work, but it's just like not for me.
it's not going to work for me, right? I mean, I think people look at church that same way too. That people have this skewed vision of church or what it is. It's about like, oh, it's for weak people. I don't need anybody else, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a reason why it works, right? Like it's a reason why people's lives are changed through therapy or through religion or through community. When we start breaking down those walls of vulnerability and allow ourselves to share intimate moments from our life, things get better. I mean, they just get better. I know I was talking with my therapist and he's like, really wanting to, you know, get vulnerable. Like, and it's weird as I don't ever have like, but as soon as we get to this point of sharing things from my past or the pains of my past, all of a sudden I shut down and I like, it's hard for me to like, because I know that like once I get to that point, I'm just gonna start breaking down and crying, and he's a man, and it's hard for me to like, I love my therapist a lot. Like, he's a fantastic, but he's quite a bit younger than me, and I've only known him for 2 months, and to sit there and just be like, okay, now I'm gonna start really hammering on these super tender air, and just know that I'm gonna cry is like, it's it's hard to want to be that vulnerable in front of someone I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt, man. It's such a weird, it's kind of like, yeah, it's hard to explain because I've definitely been there as well. Like, and I've just been kind of like at the point so many times where I've just been like, fuck it, I'll do anything to just get out
Yeah.
of this feeling, man.
Yeah, and that's kind of what brought me back to therapy because I was just like, "Fuck, dude! If I don't like really address what's going on, like I already know where these feelings like are going to take me." And I think that's like one of the most recent, like, because life is always going to present curveballs and struggles, and I would be a fool to think that life is ever just going to be a cakewalk. But in this recent struggle I've been walking through recently, like this whole, like, oh wow, I recognize feelings A, B, and C, right? And I know what, like, now I have been able to recognize this pattern. If I don't do something about this soon, or like, and really address it, I'm either going to backslide back into addiction at the worst, or at the best, I'm just going to end up shutting down and I'm going to end up losing my job. And I'm just going to hole up and put myself in a self-induced prison because I'm going to end up depressed. And it's like literally like the first time in my life since I've really felt real depression. So probably since the age of 12 or 13 till, now, like I've done something about it after the fact, if you will, but I've never been proactive in preventing it from becoming catastrophic.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Like I always just any like wisdom I've ever gained has always just been through like running into a concrete wall head first 20 times.
Right. And I'm trying to avoid going, like, I already know the outcome of running into that wall 20 times. Like, I'm trying not to do it 21 times. And so it's awesome. Like, I work for a very great company that recognizes that. And so, and then the state of Oregon also has a paid medical leave. And so I was like, okay, I need to address this going into the new year before, I believe I want to make this transparent because there could be somebody who listens to this that's walking through something similar. Um, it got to the point where I was like, I either need to do something or I'm going to start drinking again. Like I spent 2 or 3 hours in the parking lot of a liquor store closest to my house one day, just having a battle, like internally. And I didn't drink, but like the fact that like, like all the other parts of the relapse had already happened. The drinking was just the one thing that hadn't. I quit doing the things that were making me successful. And if I was still doing them, I was just checking boxes, right? Like I wasn't really putting any effort into it. I was burnt out. And so I was like, hey, I went to my work. I'm like, this is where I'm at. I can't sit with people because right now sitting with people and their problems, all I'm hearing is a problem and I'm not hearing anything about the solution and I'm shit for this job. And so the state of Oregon has paid medical leave. And so I was able to get that for 60 days at the same rate of pay I'm making about my job. And so I'm able to readdress that. And in that blessing, there has been some things that my children have needed my attention, one mentally and one of my children physically. And so I've been able to be there and help. And it's just been, but there was that part of me like going, are you being a weak little bitch right now because you don't want to go to work? Like, this battle. But then I'm like, I'm seeing like what a blessing and like, no, God had a much greater vision for me and I'm healing and I'm going into 2025 and my son and daughter are going to be on a path to healing and I'm on a path to healing and 2025 has this whole brand new door opening for me. And I don't know, man, just like learning to trust the process and be okay with healing and being okay with how that looks is, it's transformative.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time, like, I think it always feels like we gotta like to feel better or to like get to the next like quote unquote stage in life. Like we're like, well, I gotta do more. I gotta do better. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta like add to myself or add to my life in some way. And there is something kind of like beautiful about just like kind of like slowing down to speed up,
Yeah,
like
dude, I wish you were in the room with me right now because I would just give you the biggest hug because that's literally what I've been going through, right?
yeah.
Like my therapist is like, it was this last 2 or 3 weeks in therapy have been phenomenal. And Mason is the name of Mason Stewart. So if anybody watches this in their Oregon, I want to plug Mason because he's phenomenal at his job. And we talked about that. It was like, 4 years ago when I decided to get sober, not only had I never really put any time of sobriety together in 28 years, but I also had an astronomical amount of weight to lose. And so I was able to make like these huge changes and rather rapidly. Then all of a sudden I'm still like you nailed it, right? Like we feel like, oh, it's a race and to get ahead, I've got to see this shit happen. Bam, bam, bam. Then all of a sudden it slowed down. I had stability for the first time in my life, and I was like, I looked at everything like, oh shit, I'm a fucking failure. And all of a sudden, that's all the devil had kept me busy because that became my new addiction. Like
Yeah.
not purposefully, not that I was like, oh, I'm going to become a workaholic or I'm going to do this, this, and this. Like to get to where I am required me to do that. But once those things weren't happening fast enough, all of a sudden the devil was just like, "Yep, told you you were never going to be good enough. Yep, told you that your efforts were fruitless." And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to believe this because all of a sudden, those changes aren't happening very fast. The changes are slower. Those ladder rungs that I'm reaching for aren't bump 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 boom 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 boom. They're leaps, and I've got to grab a little reach a little higher to pull myself up to that next level. And all of a sudden, it started becoming like I felt like I was stagnant, and that stagnation was like, that's all the devil needed. And he was just like, "Yep, told you, none of this shit was worth it. What'd you even bother changing for?" And pretty soon you start believing those lies because for some reason as humans, like 1,000 people a day could tell me like, James, you're doing great, you're fantastic, blah 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 blah, but it'd only take that one person to validate that bullshit lie that I believe about myself as a truth, in quotes, truth, but really it's a lie that then all of a sudden that's validated and that's all I'll believe. Most of the time that's just internal validation because it's the bullshit I believe about myself.
Yeah, yeah. No, but there is something behind that, yeah, like you said, like you could the first 100 people you meet, you'd be like, oh, that's a dope shirt, man. And you're like, I'm gonna wear this shirt more often, man. Like you feel better about it.
Yeah,
You're like, oh, I'm more muscular. And then one guy's like, wait, you didn't iron your shirt? And you're like, what do you mean? Is it wrinkly? Like, is it bad? Like, should I
yeah.
not?
Or then that you'll just recognize that one wrinkle. Everything else on it could be flawless, but then all of a sudden, like I don't know why, as humans, it's so easy for us to like focus on the negative or the flaw. I mean, I don't know if it comes back to like some like caveman brain thing that like we have to be aware of the one negative thing because like that one negative thing could have eaten us,
Yeah, yeah,
10,000
100%,
years
man.
ago. But now it's just like, oh,
100%.
that's just one negative. Like, oh, Mark, 100 people can tell you, Mark, you're really smart and you're really kind. But internally, if you've ever felt validated in thinking that you're an idiot and an asshole, that's all it would take is for one person to be like, Mark, you're a fucking idiot. And you'd be like, yeah, see, I knew I was a fucking idiot. The
Yeah,
rest of
yeah.
you got the other 100 people that told me I was smart and capable, you were all idiots and assholes because I told you I was an idiot and an asshole. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
why
yeah.
that is so easy for us to believe. It's sad that like the lies of the devil are so easy to believe because we can find validation and it only takes a little bit of validation for us to believe it to be the truth.
Yeah, it is interesting too. Like I have kind of started to reframe it as like whether people like you could even anyone could just think of it as like the little like cartoonish angel and devil on your shoulder. Like I've literally started to think of it that way. Where like you're hearing those negative thoughts, and I'm like, oh, this is literally not me. Like this is not a part of who I am. This is like a demon in my ear, dude. Like that's the exact same thing.
It is, but that's
And
because that's what obviously my religious beliefs, but I believe that to be the truth, right? In Christianity, we're taught about the divinity, the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, I believe that the Holy Spirit is what resides in us. That is that little conscious voice that we hear in ourselves. So like, and then if the Holy Spirit isn't residing in us, then there's something opposite of that, and that is that lie, that little like, go ahead and do it. It isn't going to matter. You're right. It doesn't matter. Like you can go like the
no
hell
one's
does it
gonna
matter?
find
Just go
out.
drink.
Yeah.
No one's going to find out. Like you sit here and drink a pint of booze in your car and no one's going to find out. Go home and sleep it off. Right. Like, or go gamble or flip on that porn. Like no one's going to know.
Yeah,
But the point is
100%.
I would know.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, I, I, I'm a firm believer in the fact that like, you can't change for somebody else. You can't lose weight for somebody else. You can't get sober for somebody else. But in those moments of weakness or self-doubt, when you need that motivation, that's when like that, like what would my kids think? Right? Like what would the people who have supported me think if I did well, if I backslide? And that's what honestly helped keep me sober. So like I don't want to disappoint people. I've spent far too long disappointed, and mostly I don't want to disappoint myself.
Yeah. It is
But here I
interesting.
sit, still
Sorry.
sober. So, well, that's it.
Thank God, man. No,
Yeah, I agree.
there's something, people always think like, or at least you're always told like not to, I guess like make decisions or base your worth off of other people. But it is crazy how much when you consider other people, because like if I think about myself half the time, I'm like, well, I don't really give a fuck about letting myself down. Like I've already done that so many times and I know it. So like it doesn't
Right.
really matter. But when I think about some of like the risks that I almost take in life or anything like that, and I'm like, man, what would my dad think if he found out his son was doing this? Like, how fucking crushing would that be for him? Or, what would my girlfriend think if she found out that this is how I was thinking or behaving? What would my mother think? Like thinking those thoughts is like literally some of the only things that gets me out of the stupidity I find myself in sometimes, man.
I think that's the point of having community, right? Is like God didn't intend for us to be solo creatures. Like he created humanity so we could be dependent on one another. And sometimes that means that like we can't do it all on our own. And it's weird because Western society, especially like this pioneering spirit that developed the West, right? Like you're going to go out on your own and you're going to like, you're going to just strike it on your own. You're pull yourself up from your bootstraps. Like that's been so ingrained in us, but like that is not how we are designed to live, right? Like you look at the rest of the world, there are places where like whole blocks or whole villages are just family, right? Like third and fourth cousins know each other. I couldn't even tell you one of my third cousins' names, dude. Let alone
Yeah.
like, I was having this. I was out to dinner, or excuse me, I was out to lunch with some dear friends. Hannah and I were out with some great friends from church the other day. I'm actually going to go to Africa with my friend for 3 weeks on a mission trip together, and we were talking about that. Like, his wife is Malaysian, and how like they their family knows everybody. Grandparents are involved in their grandkids' lives, and like your neighbor. And I'm like, oh, the only neighbor I know is my is my landlord, and the only reason I know him is because I have to give him rent once a month.
Right.
Right? Like I don't know any of my neighbors. Like how well do you know your neighbors? How well do you know the person that lives 10 feet away from your door? I mean, I don't know where you. I don't, my neighbors are far apart, so it makes a little bit more sense. But I have lived in suburbia, and I didn't know the person across the street, let alone the person like on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, yeah. I remember even, dude, like the last place I lived was like in the downtown core of Richmond here. And I lived in an apartment building, dude. There I don't know how many people lived in that building, but I think I knew three people after like 2 years. And it was only because like I went to the same gym as them. So like it's like
Yeah,
I didn't even talk to them. Like it was kind of like, oh, I bumped into them at the elevator. I was like, oh, yo.
yeah,
And they,
right. It's so bizarre how. And I mean, I'm so grateful that we have the technology that we have, so you and I can have this conversation. But man, technology that is supposedly meant to designed to connect us more, I feel has done the exact opposite. Like yesterday was my little girl's 15th birthday, and at one point in time, like I was guilty in this too, but like as we're sitting there waiting for pizza, there's a whole table full of people, like 12 to 15 people, and every human being is on their smartphone, like
oh man.
communicating with somebody that wasn't at the table. And I'm like, I literally had this thought. I was like, huh, here we are. We're communicating, but we're not saying shit to the person right next to us. I was like, this is not a healthy sign. And it's not like that my family was this one extreme in the
No,
in the
no,
pizza
not at
parlor.
all.
Like everyone was, you know what I mean? Like, uh, it was crazy. But
It's
like
everywhere, dude.
it is. It's just bizarre to me that like we'll sit here and communicate with people about sitting here next to somebody not saying anything to them, right? Like let's say like my daughter was with one of her best friends and they're like sitting there taking reels of themselves eating pizza to share with their friends instead of talking to each other. I'm just like, dude.
Or
I
even
like,
just think about like
uh,
even when you're just sitting with somebody, you're kind of shooting the shit, talking to each other. Like I know like even with my friends, like dude, I feel like it's just like completely ruined communication because even when we are just sitting and talking to each other, we're like, "Oh, yo, did I
how
show you
often?
this meme? Oh, did I show you this video? Oh, did I show you this thing that I
Yeah,
saw on Instagram?" Like it's like we don't even have our own thoughts anymore. Like the things we talk about are just the things that we see on social media.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's crazy. I actually like my phone won't charge like through the charging port anymore, so I have to use my wireless charger. And somehow last night it like got bumped just enough to where it wasn't charging, and so I didn't have my phone all day with me, and until I got home. And I had texted you. Um, I went to church. I was just sitting thinking, like, I think I'm gonna just start on Sundays. I think I'm gonna start leaving my phone at home. Like, Hannah and I usually serve, and we go to the early service, and one of us is always serving the second service. So I'm usually sit through two, both the 9 a.m. and 10:45 service. But today I was like, I got what I needed from the thing, and I just kind of wanted to decompress. And then like, I was walking, which I love walking, and my church is up in the hills, and so I was walking through the hills of West Salem, and I can't tell you how many times I kept going to my pocket on that 2.5 mile walk looking for my phone, and I'm like, and I kept having this thought, I'm like, like that's an addiction, man. That is literally an addiction. Like I don't know, I like what I was like, oh, I'll put on some music and just listen to it through Spotify while I walk, or I'll read something, or, and I'm just like, how about you just like appreciate the fact that it's not raining for 2 minutes in Oregon and go for a nice walk and just be grateful to not hear anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dude, I've done that a couple times recently actually because anytime I have to transfer like videos or anything from my phone to my computer, it always like takes obviously time. And I'm like sending it through like I either airdrop it or I plug my phone in and I have to transfer the files. But I'm always like I want to use this time wisely. So I start going for runs. Yesterday, Teddy and I just went to the mall and it's been like it's mind blowing that like I spend like 4 hours away from my phone and it seems like a big deal when like
Yeah,
dude that should be like how humans functioned for probably like you know up until
forever.
5 years ago like
Yeah,
like it's really fucked dude like even I do if you think about it like even just like think about how many great thoughts happened because there was a person just sitting on a toilet taking a shit for like 15 minutes,
and he
just
was
sitting
taking
there
notes.
with nothing to do, and you thinking about all your life's problems. And now for 15 minutes, like how many times a day does someone shit? Maybe once a day, twice a day. Like that's 15 minutes, half an hour a day where you're just not thinking anymore.
Yep. Yeah.
That like the shower is the only safe place really where you can just kind of think.
Yeah, it's crazy because like Um, I recently have like switched gyms because I've been working from like haven't been working, so I've been taking my daughter to and from to school, and so it's closer than the gym I was working in because I'm not working in that town, and so I was started going to that gym, and like the old gym had a steam room, and so you couldn't go in there with your phone because it would just I mean it's a steam room, right? Like it would be pointless,
Right.
but the new gym has a sauna. And so it's a dry one of those infrared dry saunas. And so I go in there and I'm like, I the old gym I used to look forward to it. Like, right, this is where you'd get to know people. You'd have like maybe have no conversation, but you might get into a really good one, right? Because it's quiet and there's. But now I go in there because it's a dry heat. Like people have their earphones in, people bring their phones in there, and they're just scrolling through YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and like just silent. It's just yeah. So you can't even escape it in the locker room in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. Even just like, man, like I've gone for runs recently and I just leave my phone at home, which is like a foreign concept to me. Cause I always,
Right?
like you said, I always just like bring my phone, I'll listen to music, listen to audiobooks. I used to track my runs. Like I used to like put like on Strava, there's like an app
Uh huh.
and like track like how fast you ran, how far you ran, how long you ran, compare it to other
Right.
things. Like I'm some sort of fucking college athlete or something. Like I like need to. like keep a and there is definitely something about like you need to keep a standard for yourself, but it's also it's like, do I really need to be doing this? Like, is this,
Man,
like, is it really benefiting me? And like, or maybe I should get the same running experience that every man had up until 15 years ago,
right.
where you're just running and hearing your own thoughts and your own breath and you're hearing nature and you're breathing fresh air. And who would have thought that that'd actually be better for me?
Yeah. Well, that it goes back to that whole comparison piece, right? Like, man, I think about that too. It's like I'll sit there because I have some goals, like health goals. Like I would eventually in the next year or two, probably close to two, like to like do some over 40 bodybuilding shows, right? Because I have to have purpose for the like the efforts, right? And I spend a lot of time in the gym. And so, but man, like part of that is like, man, I have to eat everything just perfect. Like, dude, and then I go out and I have some pizza with my daughter on her birthday, and then I had a piece of cake, and then in the morning I have to weigh myself, and the scale didn't just show what I want, and I sit there and I beat myself up like it's like I'm some sort of piece of garbage, even though like 90% of everything I eat every day is calculated and weighed and is per like, but there's just something like, dude, I don't know. It goes back to that comparison piece, right? And comparison is a thief of joy. I mean, it is right, but like, well, last week when I ran that same lap, I was zero point 0.5 miles faster and 3 minutes quicker, and but there wasn't a headwind or like, dude, it's just right because we're trying to compare, we're trying to compete against ourselves or what the other 35 or 44-year-old is doing, or however, it's just, ugh. But it goes back to that, right? Like the thing that I'm communicating you with right now, right? I can, I often tease uh my fiance, I tease Hannah because she'll see like what I search or like what my Instagram like advertises to me. It's it's super buff dudes and Jesus, and I'm like, at least I'm not like looking for girls that are advertising their their
Yeah, yeah.
OnlyFans on my Instagram page. It's half naked dudes and Jesus, like,
Yeah,
and
dude.
some tattoos.
Oh man, mine gets gruesome, man, because I always get like people bailing off skateboards, people in jujitsu or MMA like breaking their arms or their legs or something like that. And I always, dude, Teddy's been like, stop showing me this shit. I don't want to see people get hurt all the time. That's
I
all
have
my
that too, but
algorithm is.
it's usually people in the gym. Like I don't
Yeah,
know how
yeah.
many times I've seen like some girl squatting with a long ponytail and the bar just like catching her ponytail and like bending her backwards, dude. Like
Oh man. Or
or
pec tears. I used to get a lot of
or
pec tears from guys
yeah,
benching.
or elbow or do elbows blowing out from the same thing, like trying to bench press too
Oh.
much and all of a sudden their elbow just decides to dislocate and drop like
Oh.
500 pounds on them. Yeah.
Dude, I get, yeah, so many injuries, like a lot of elbows getting snapped, a lot of shoulders, a lot of knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gruesome what the algorithm can give you sometimes, man. But
Yeah.
it's also like back to the running thing and like the tracking the things. Like it's also like, dude, we rely so much on technology and all these like products and all these services of dude, there was a point where I was like getting like a smartwatch and I'm like tracking my heart rates during my workouts and things like that. And I'm like, what's my BPM at? Like, what's my BP? And it's like, dude, you can just like ask yourself how you feel and look in the mirror.
Right.
Like it's like, dude, I'm like, you're in your 20s, you're not doing anything competitive, you're not like a fucking athlete, you're a carpenter. You're just working out to feel good. Like, why the fuck am I overcomplicating all this shit, thinking it's like making my life better, you know?
But it doesn't though. I think that's kind of the point I was trying to get to. That is the point. It's like yes, I really would love to be able to get to the point where I feel that I'm ready to like because I love lifting weights and I want to have purpose to it, right? And other than just the fact that it makes me feel better and I look better, like I want to have purpose to it because I do it a lot. And I feel like I would love to be able to go do jujitsu or something along those lines, but uh, my joints are hanging on by that's besides the point. So there has to have purpose to it. But like at the same time, it's like just because I have one bad meal or I eat cake with my daughter on her birthday and what's already going to take a series of days, if not months, and realistically years to get to where I want to be, like one day isn't going to make or break that. Like obviously a series of days, a month off of eating like crap is not going to be good for me, but one day, not even a day, one meal, like isn't going to make or break that.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes your body needs that kind of like reset. Not that like it's obviously like if you just like going down like two large pizzas and a 2 liter thing of like Coke or whatever, like
Right.
it's not like your
But
body needs that, but like sometimes you
no.
do need like just like a mental or a spiritual reset of like, all right, man, take a breath, like chill out for a second,
Yeah.
play a
And then it's
video
also
game for
like,
an hour if you need to. Like,
yeah, exactly. Just to do rest and enjoy like part of eating is communal, right? And like part of that is breaking bread and like enjoying the fellowship of your fellow man and not fucking stressing out about what you're putting in your body in that moment. No, I would never advocate like, yeah, just go ahead and eat like crap all the time because that's not good for us, right? Like the more they find out about gut health and how it correlates to emotional health and brain health, it's like it's what we digest is what we become, and that's true what we listen to with our ears, what we watch with our eyes, and what we put in our bellies. So
yeah, no doubt. No, obviously, but there's something about that even just like that idea of like rest days. Like I just for so long like I always and it comes back to what we were saying earlier of like um we always think like more is more. Like I have to get more, I have to get more done and I for the longest time and I still struggle with this. Like I judge my days based off of how much I achieved that day. Not
right,
thinking like, oh, a day of rest today might actually make me like twice as effective tomorrow.
yeah, right. Because somehow we get addicted to that. I don't know if it's a certain personality type, but we get addicted to that, like checking off boxes. Boop boop boop. Got this and this done it. And sometimes it's more about getting the boxes checked off than the quality of the output of what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that started
100%,
what
man.
that started with well, that was a big part of what started me, for lack of a better term, backsliding. Was that I was so worried about like catching up and sprinting to that starting line because of like kind of going back to our earlier conversation. Like I felt so far behind every other 40 some odd year old person out there because I'm literally just starting my life over at 40. And how am I supposed to catch up? Well, how am I going to catch up? By working harder than everybody else, doing more and doing more. And pretty soon that doing more just became crap effort. Like the effort wasn't crap, the output was crap, the product was crap.
Yeah. Or even just like I know like there's so many times because like I try and journal as often as I can. And like
Yeah.
there's times where like I'll write down like, okay, I'm gonna do these three things today or tomorrow or whatever. And then maybe I get them done, maybe I don't, whatever. But I there was just so many times where I sat down, I'm like kind of just like feeling like absolute shit. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I got these three things done. But like I feel like garbage, but like it's a quote unquote successful day. And it's like, how many
Yeah.
times are you gonna have that in a row until you're like, when do I feel good? Like, why isn't this
And
making me feel good?
that's exactly how I started to feel, man. I was just like, oh, beat myself up because of this or that, or because something that somebody else is experiencing, and then taking it on as my own, and like I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna fix, and then like it wasn't getting better, and so then it was just like, well, when is it supposed to get better? Right? I'm doing all these things because it's supposed to get better, and then getting angry because it wasn't getting better, and like just realizing, like, dude, just rest. Like and so like that was another huge thing that my therapist had told me, and I probably won't put it in quite as elegant words as he did, but he was something like, look at what you've accomplished, be accept that this is where you're at and you've put a lot of effort in. But just because you accept where you're at and be okay with that doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay. He's like, you're far too driven, you're far too determined. Like, but it's okay to accept this is the place and be okay with that. But I was just like, I don't know why, like that concept of like was so when he said that, I was just like felt like I was staring at him like I said see like he was a monster from another planet or some alien being. I'm like, what do you mean I can accept where I'm at and still move ahead? Like, if I accept where I'm at, that means I don't know. It was just like a completely foreign concept to my ears.
Yeah, yeah. And it just kind of even feels like it's easier to stay in denial. Like it's easier to be like, no, it's not that bad. Like it's not, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't out, dude, you think I'm dumb enough to allow myself to get to that point? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you get those thoughts in your head and you're like, no, it's not as bad as it seems. I have this, I have that. You're like, oh, do you know what I mean? Like struggling
Yeah.
to admit where you're at, let alone
Yep.
accept it.
Yep. Because but that's why I was like, I have to pause. If I don't pause right now and get myself back on track, it is going to be as bad as because I can't keep up this pace, and B, I'm not doing anything to fill my cup. Like I'm going through the motions. I mean, yes, I'm still, but like I'm not doing it with any sense of passion. It's just a checking of the box. Like I wasn't journaling, I wasn't getting up in the mornings, I wasn't walking my dog, I wasn't praying. Like I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning, sure. I'm getting 3:30 in the morning to go open the gym. Then I'm working for 4 hours at the gym so I can go work a 10-hour day at my main job. So I work 4 10s there so I can have Fridays off. And then by the time you're done with that, it's a 60-hour week of actual work plus an hour drive time there and back plus 2 hours of weightlifting. So it really makes a 60 or 70-hour work week or 70 hours away from home. And I've been doing that for every day for 2 years. And that's not a sustainable pace, at least not for me, and not in this season I'm in, and not and it also breaks down the things of value that we're breaking down the relationships of value in my life. Like my kids weren't seeing me as much, and I obviously haven't put the effort in to change me as much as I have. Um, to not have a relationship with my kids. That's my number one relationship. Hannah wasn't seeing me as much. And then more importantly, like the communities I was involved in at church and in recovery, they weren't seeing me either. And so not that they need to see me, I need to see them rather. Like I wasn't involved there either. And so since then, I've been going back to Bible study Tuesday mornings and having that fellowship. I've been involved in leadership at church, been going to a couple AA meetings, like shit that I need to remind me of where I don't want to go because I can hear somebody else's story or I can see somebody right off the streets, or maybe there's someone's inspiration that has nothing to do with addiction or recovery, but who's walking through something difficult and I can hear how they survived it. Or maybe it's the other part of it is that like maybe I can share with somebody and breathe life into them just through my own experience. You know?
Yeah. The one thing that you said there that really stuck with me that I'm gonna have to really think about is when you said like it's just not for me or maybe not in this season of my life because I think that so many times like you see other people doing things, or at least I see other people doing things, and I'm like, oh, how come I'm not doing that? How come I can't do that? What the fuck? Am I not as good as that person? Or I take other times in my life, like, yeah, I was working like, 80 hours, and I'm like, how am I getting tired doing 50 hours right now? Why do I feel like
Right.
shit?
Yeah, I think well, A, we age, and B, I don't know. I was there was for a long time I was used to operating 60 or 70 hours a week. But I was also 15 years younger, 20 years younger. I was also stayed out and drinking all night, like like it was just a lot different. My priorities shifted. Or, I think we kind of going back to like just because it isn't that season now doesn't mean it isn't that season. Because I struggle with that a lot. I'm like, for the longest time, I didn't think I was ever capable, but now I realize that like I realize the amount of potential that I have as a human. And I believe that all people have a deeper level of potential than probably 99%. Like outside of insane human beings like David Goggins and a few other people in that realm of the planet, like Usain, but like there are some people who absolutely push everything they have, be it mentally or physically, spiritual gifts to the absolute limit. But so many of us uh, maybe don't have that opportunity to explore it that deep, or we end up being beaten down by society in our own thoughts, where we're like, it's not for me, or I can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. And then we don't see what we're truly capable of. And I think because of what I've walked through in the last 4 years, I see how truly much potential and what I can actually achieve. And I can get really frustrated with myself because I'm like, why did you waste so much time? Like that person that you thought was so special and that like could afford that big home and travel to Europe, like, and have done those things, like they're no different than you and you can absolutely do that. And then like it's not happening. And then I can start beating myself up because why? I'm comparing myself. And
Hmm.
comparison is a thief of joy. Most of those people probably didn't spend 20 plus years in deep addiction, you know, or if they had, they quit at a sooner time, or, like we all start at a different point, and being accepting of those starting points is okay. It's better to start the race than to only be a spectator.
Yeah, there's almost like those it's like these like changing delusions because like at first you're like, oh, I could never do that. And then you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can do that. And then you're like, I can definitely do it. And then you're like, why haven't I done it yet? And like
Yeah.
all these delusions like keep changing in your head and it's just like it's definitely possible. Anyone can make $1 million. I could probably do it for sure. Like I just have to find something and then want to do it bad enough. And then like it just doesn't happen as fast as you want it and you're like, do I not want it bad enough? Like, am I broken? Like, maybe it's not possible. And it's like, well, you probably got to crack at it for a little bit longer, right? Like,
Exactly that. And like I think that's so much of it is like so often we get fed partial truths in these self-made stories, or like going back to the algorithm piece, like my algorithm will always be like, I went from this person to this person in 90 days, and if you give me $7,000 today, I can get you there too in 90 days.
oh,
Knowing,
yeah.
well, knowing what I know about
Some of
physical
my
fitness,
friends do that shit, dude.
like knowing what I know about physical fitness, I know that there is no way that you went from that to that in 90 days. Unless you're like pumping yourself full of drugs and you've had like, and you starved yourself to death. Like there's no way you did that in 90 days. There's just
Yeah.
not. And but I'll be like that. Well, like how'd this asshole do that in 90 days? Here I am 4 years into this journey and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, dude, I don't know, be kind to yourself. That's what I have to tell myself a lot. That's what Hannah tells me all the time. She's like, will you speak kindly to the person that I love? Like, be nice to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No
Be nice to
shit, man.
yourself. If anyone's listening to this, be nice to yourself.
Fuck. No doubt, man. It's crazy how that's like the hardest fucking thing to do is just to be good to yourself.
It's so fucking hard. I know. I like my therapist and I talk about that too. Like as far as motivation, like we can dangle the carrot in front of us like the donkey, or we can use the whip. Like the
Yeah,
carrot
yeah.
is a much better form of motivation than like whipping yourself. But some reason, like I'm just like, give me that fucking whip, dude. I will
Yeah, yeah.
flog me. I will flog me. You don't
Yeah.
have, no one else has to. I will beat myself up harder than anybody.
Yeah, no shit, dude. I give me that carrot and don't look, and I'll probably punish myself with that too.
Yeah, just calling myself a fat piece of shit for
Yeah.
eating the carrot.
Yeah, man. Fuck.
Uh,
Dude, that is definitely the hardest thing is just to kind of just be nice to yourself or to even just have those thoughts because it's like even like dude, like I said, even on good days, I'll still be sitting there like, yeah, you could have done more, or you could have done it better, or you could have done it
oh,
without
dude,
checking your phone every 15 minutes.
100%. Or yeah, like, dude, like the other day, I'm like, I I had been a while, like I haven't worked out with my partner in a while because we switched routines, and like there's some days that like recently have been a bit, but I had a great workout, and I even pushed like added like 4 or 5 more movements into my routine. I'm like, this is a great day. And then like right after I was done and showering, I looked at like my output and like how much I'm like, oh. But instead of just being like, dude, that was great, and enjoying like how positive, I instantly beat myself up because like, oh, I could have squeezed out another like, I don't know, or like, you know, I'm branching into a whole new endeavor slowly, and I'm like, I don't know how many times I'm like, oh, my psyche has tried to tell me that I can't do it, or this is way too radical and new for you. And but I'm just like, I have to sit there and tell myself to like, all right, self, shut up and be kind and trust. Trust. And have talk for a whole nother hour on that word alone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, trust is a tough one too, because it's like, again, I think the biggest thing sometimes is even just like trusting ourselves. Like it always comes, all these issues that I have with other people, like patience for other people, trust for other people, forgiveness for other people, it always seems to kind of stem from the fact that like I don't have these things for myself.
100%, brother. Ding, ding, ding. That's the grand prize. Like, you just won the double Jeopardy question, dude. Yeah, that's it, right? It's because we like learning to trust. Like, I'm 44, almost 44 and a half years old, and I just now learning to trust myself, right? Like, how weird that is to say that, like, I've strung together a few decent years of making solid decisions. I have like 30 years of making not so solid decisions. And like, it's scary to trust myself because it's so new. And like, dude, trusting people is not something I tend to do. And, forgiving myself is something I definitely struggle with. So I would agree with your statements there a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've really been struggling with recently, man. And that's why like I've just been like kind of reaching out to just different resources that way, like obviously therapy or and I just started reading this book about forgiveness of just like trying to figure out atonement and forgiveness and how that all works because it's like, man, I even get like, dude, I get so far down the victimhood rabbit hole of like not being able to forgive myself. And then I kind of get like almost like addicted to that feeling of like, why aren't I able to do this? Like, am I not the type of person that can even like it kind of like almost compounds, you know what I mean? Like I get mad at the
Hmm.
fact that I can't do it. And
Yeah,
then
like yeah,
that
mad because
becomes
you fit
another reason for not
right,
being
and you
able
start
to.
making yourself feel like you're broken,
Exactly.
right? Like, yeah, like why can't I do this? Like I should just be able to do this. Like what's the matter with me? And then not are you not only beating yourself up something for the past that you have no control over anymore, you're now compounding that issue because you're like, now I'm broken in this moment because I can't get over what I did 10 years ago or 5 minutes ago. Like, dude, that's crazy.
Even like, dude, like I haven't even finished this book yet, but it's like you think like I'm reading this book, like I said, it's like a Nazi officer being like confessing his sins and asking for forgiveness from this like Jewish doctor. And it's like if you could even imagine that this Jewish doctor can start to forgive this man. And it's like, wait,
Right?
I can't even forgive myself for overeating last weekend. Like, what the fuck? Like, I can't even
Right?
forgive myself for getting into debt as a teenager, or like whatever it was. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's so crazy. Uh, but it's amazing what we can forgive in other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man.
I can't think of her name, and it's going to drive me crazy. It's so stressed. Just trying to look it up. She's a very famous Christian author, and I think she pastors a church too, or she preaches. Um, her father molested her, like sexually assaulted her for the first like 14 or 15 years of her life,
Oh,
right? Like, I mean, horrible stuff, right? And then I remember my mom sharing this book of hers with me, and it talks about how she ended up forgiving her father, who who, in my mind, as a father, committed the most heinous act you could possibly like. way worse than just murdering your child is sexually assaulting your daughter for and then her little sister too, right? Like that shit's fucking horrible. And the mom that turned a blind, that all of it's horrible. Needless to say, she found a way to forgive her dad. And not only did she forgive her dad, she brought him to know Jesus Christ. And I'm like, how is that possible? How can you forgive someone of that? So I sit there and think of that. I'm like, well, if she can forgive him of that and God can forgive me of everything, like why am I having such a hard time forgiving myself for, in the grand scheme of things, I guess, not that we should compare, but are much smaller things, or the Nazi doctor who performed, or a Jewish doctor who performed an operation on a Nazi who could have easily botched the surgery, killed that person, probably cost him his own life, but like in some sense felt vindicated in killing this human being that's been killing probably people he knows
Yeah,
or
yeah,
involved in the
100%.
murder of people he knows. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he battled that thought. I'm 100% sure he battled that thought of like, man, you know how easily I can not perform this operation right now and let this human being die, or pretend like I did and let this human being die.
And how
But
much
he didn't.
easier would that be? Like, it's like,
That's
I know
so.
for myself, like, dude, if I like someone like cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, I want to follow them home. I have
I
so much hatred in my heart, dude. And it's like,
So do I,
fuck.
dude. It's the one place that I have not been able to get my temper under control. Like I was actually talking to my therapist about that. I'm like, dude, I really like I've gotten so good at keeping my temper in check, except when I drive. Oh, dude, some like Penske truck like pulled out in front of me, had to like slam on my brakes. I accelerated really quick, got right up next to him, like hung out of my car and flipped him off in the rain last night on the way home. I was just like, then I'm like, and of course I'm really close to my church at that time. And I'm like, you did not handle that well at all.
Yeah.
Like, but part of it is it's like it's startling, and it's like so it jolts you, and it's dangerous, and so I don't know. It's silly, but it's not very smart.
Yeah. No, I just, dude, like the littlest things can set me off. And I'm like, man, I hope that person has a bad day. Like,
Yeah. Right? It's so silly.
I'm so fucking evil that way, dude. I have to, I was like literally trying to explain it to one of my best buddies of like, yeah, like I have a serious issue, dude. Like it's like I can't, like all I can do is pray when that happens because like this part of me is like broken, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, but it can be fixed. There's that what's that there's like a famous Japanese art where they take like broken pots and then they weld them back together with gold,
Yeah, yeah, it's
right?
it's kintsugi or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's us, dude. We just got these little broken pieces and then we can mend them back together with gold, brother.
No doubt, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm kind of tuckered out, dude. How you feeling?
I'm feeling about the same, dude. I'm ready for a nap. I'm not gonna lie.
All
I'm
right,
sure
bro.
it's gray and rainy where you are. It's just like
Yeah,
or yeah, dude, it's because I'm pretty sure like our weather systems are pretty similar. Dude, the
we've had
perpetual
nothing
gray
but
and the perpetual it's like, dude, I'm like I'm looking forward to January or 1st of February when I can head to Arizona or Southern California and soak up some sunshine.
yeah, yeah. It's been nothing but storms here. We've had wind storms and rain storms every single
Same here.
day.
Every single day for like the last probably week. And I mean, just like a couple of times, it's just like I live up in the hills in a little tiny aluminum trailer, like me and the kids and Hannah, and I'm just like, wake me up at night because I can feel it vibrating in the window. So I'm just like, okay, God, please don't let any trees fall on. Like,
Oh, dude.
I don't want to be impaled. Like
Yeah, dude. Well,
that's
we have cranberry farms right behind us, and there's a big tree line in between. And we had
yeah,
a tree come down next door like 2 years ago, smashed like a bunch of the siding and the windows and the deck next door, everything like that. And it's yeah, it sucks, dude. All you can do, yeah. It's and it's just so dark so early, dude. It's so easy
yeah,
to
and then just feel beat down by it.
Dude, we were out yesterday. Like Teddy and I went out to go grab like some Chinese food. We wanted to grab like some beef buns
Yeah.
at this little bakery, and it's like a 15-20 minute drive from our place. And it's like 4:30 and it's like pouring rain and almost pitch dark outside. And it feels like it's like 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, it's literally not even five yet.
Yeah, it's exactly how I felt yesterday. We got home. It was like 5:30. It's pitch black. We've been running errands all day, and I'm just like, why does it feel like it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night? Because it's been
Yeah,
dark all day. Even when the sun's out, the clouds are so gray that that it hardly feels light.
that's what it is right now for us. It's just gray
Yep.
outside.
Same here. Big gray cumulus nimbus clouds.
All right, brother, let's wrap this
All right,
up.
man.
You have anything
Yep.
anything you want to
No, man.
share?
I just love you, man, and I always look forward to this. And I'll talk to you soon, my friend. Thanks for a great
Likewise.
conversation. All right,
Likewise,
bro.
man. Thank you, bro.
Yep. Take care.
Much love. Peace.
Bye.